I'll call the meeting to order.
Thank you, Your Worship. The first item this evening is a presentation from the Coquitlam Foundation concerning National Philanthropy Day. I'd like to invite Colleen Talbot to come forward.
Welcome, Colleen.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to come and address you this evening. As stated, I'm Colleen Talbot, Chair of the Foundation, and I'd like to introduce our Executive Director, Laura Lawson, and some of our Board of Directors who are here tonight, Ron Roberge, Sam Nakai, I'm not sure if he's here yet, Brian Robinson, Julie Fisher, and Janet Toddington. Those who weren't able to join us tonight include Wim van der Zem, Richard Rainey, Terry O'Neill, Jerry Wallace, and of course Richard Stewart, who as Mayor is a statutory member of the Foundation. We would also like to recognize the council members who have been on our committees, May Reid, who is on our Special Events Committee, Finn Donnelly, who's on our Land Trust Committee, and we can't not mention Lou Sikora, who is one of the original founders of the Coquitlam Foundation, and we do appreciate the support of all the councillors at our special events over the years. So the reason we're here tonight, we come before you in our efforts to raise awareness and to promote charity and philanthropy in our community. Yesterday was National Philanthropy Day. November 15th every year is National Philanthropy Day, a special day to celebrate the art of giving. The belief in the benefits of charity, benefits, by the way, which accrue to both the giver and the recipient, has motivated the Coquitlam Foundation since we were created by an act of the BC Legislature in 1992. And in those past 17 years, the Foundation has given out over $525,000. We now manage over $1.6 million in funds, and we would like to tell you that we're very proud because we managed to increase that amount last year, even though we were in a state of recession generally. In everything we do, we embrace the values that motivated our founders, and we continue to move ahead with our mission to encourage and support creative, targeted philanthropy that builds a vibrant, sustainable, and healthy community. The Coquitlam Foundation offers local residents the opportunity to focus their donations in their own community and to create a legacy for the future. As such, it is a vehicle for caring citizens who want to provide a benefit to our community in perpetuity. But before we look too far ahead, please allow us to review for a moment some of the highlights of our work over the past year. Shortly after we met last year, we hired our very first Executive Director, Laura Lawson, who you met a few minutes ago. And I would like to ask her now to just give you a quick review of some of the activities of the Foundation since she joined us.
Thank you, Colleen. Taking the lead on local philanthropy, this spring the Coquitlam Foundation worked with Honorary Chairperson Peter Legge to establish the new Peter Legge Literacy Endowment Fund. Mr. Legge launched the fund with $20,000 raised from his 2008 Golf Classic, and the Peter Legge Literacy Endowment Fund will provide enhanced educational opportunities for students and families in the School District 43 area. Mr. Legge also donated $3,000 from those proceeds to the Foundation's Kickstart campaign to support operational costs. Another spring highlight, the Foundation awarded $2,000 to the I Love My City campaign and donated $5,500 to help launch the first annual Water's Edge event, co-created by Coastal Sound Music Academy and the Evergreen Cultural Center. In May, we held our annual Grants and Awards presentation evening, distributing $50,000 in scholarships, bursaries, and grants. A list of the recipients is displayed, thank you, on the screen above. Mostly grants of $3,500 each. There were some smaller amounts distributed as well. Recipients included Children of the Street Society, Coquitlam Public Library, Kids Sport BC, Pocomo Youth Services Society, Mothers Against Drunk Driving so that they could do presentations in our Coquitlam high schools, and the Coquitlam After School program, as well as the Arthritis Society, the Plasties Art School Program Support, and the Glen Pine 50 Plus Society, the Arts Club at Glen Pine, and then to the Royal Columbian Hospital Foundation contribution towards neonatal equipment purchase. and Society Place Maillardville for summer camps, and to Lord Baden-Powell, the PACs, again for summer camps, and to the Vancouver International Children's Festival specifically to be able to sponsor Coquitlam students to attend the festival. And lastly, to the Stroke Recovery Association. This fall, the Hang Tough Arthritis Group received $1,000 from the Sheila Elaine Fulton Fund to assist with a Coquitlam-based workshop on arthritis research, and again to the Stroke Recovery Association receiving $1,416 towards their work. The Coquitlam Foundation awarded 7 $1,000 bursaries to local students, and in addition, Kelly Yip received a $1,000 Raymond A. Leclerc Memorial Scholarship, and Daniel Mortensen received $1,000 for the first of the CMLA Brodie Campbell Memorial Scholarship Funds. In October, the Coquitlam Foundation held the annual gala, the Bell Bottoms and Beads Gala event at the Red Robinson Theatre. We're happy to report that we raised $10,000 through the silent auction, through ticket sales, and through donations. Thank you for support, because we had support from all around. Corporate sponsors included the Coquitlam Now, the Tri-City News, Great Canadian Casinos, and Eureka Resources Incorporated.
Thank you, Laurel. Finally tonight, we are proud to announce publicly for the first time a new fund, the Symington Endowment Fund. And this fund specifically is going to be established to support children and youth in the Tri-City area, will help children with mobility challenges and or autism, disadvantaged youth, as well as elite athletes to access programs in gymnastics and or movement therapy. The fund will be seeded with an initial contribution of $10,000 from Club Aviva. And I would like to invite Vivian Symington, owner of Club Aviva, to come forward with her check for those funds. We have a lovely big check here to show everyone. Thanks, Vivian. We do receive donations from many sources: individuals, families, the provincial government direct access grant program, other foundations, and corporations. In fact, just last Thursday, the RBC Foundation donated $1,000 to our general fund. So please allow me to use this forum tonight to extend our sincere gratitude to all our donors, big and small. Without their support, our community would be diminished. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Coquitlam for its continued moral and logistic support. Finally, a big thank you goes out to all our volunteer board members, committee members, and everyone who works so hard to keep our foundation moving forward. So on behalf of the Coquitlam Foundation, we thank you for sharing this good news about philanthropy in our community tonight. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I just want to thank you ever so much for your presentation. I've supported the Coquitlam Foundation for many years. However, I have to say that I wasn't aware just of the extent of your contributions to the community. So thank you very much for coming tonight and sharing that with us.
I would say, Colleen, on behalf of the City and Council, we thank the Coquitlam Foundation for all their hard work year in and year out about improving lives, improving our community through all the facets that make up the Coquitlam Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 2 concerns the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, November 2nd. The recommendation is to approve those minutes.
Moved and seconded. Any questions, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 3 concerns the minutes of a Special Strategic Priorities Administration and Protective Services Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 2nd. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
Any errors, omissions, or questions? Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 4 is the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting held Monday, November 9th. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
To receive.
Second. Any errors, omissions within the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 4, the first item of business arising out of those minutes concerns a proposed road cancellation adjacent to Town Centre Park. It's Bylaw 4078. The recommendation is that Council give first 3 readings to Bylaw 4078, City of Coquitlam Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw.
Second. Seeing no comments, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Next item is authorization for a development's variance permit. It concerns lot width reduction for a proposed subdivision at 1360 Glenbrook Street. The recommendation is that Council approve the signing and sealing of this DVP and that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it. Council has received some submissions that we have received in the past few days, but I'd also invite the Chair to call for speakers at this time.
At this time, I'll call. Is there anybody wishing to speak to this item? Is there anybody wishing to speak to this item? For the third and last time, anybody wishing to speak to this item? There's none.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I invite someone to move and second the motion.
Second.
Seeing no comments, all those, oh, sorry, Councillor Lynch.
I was just going to comment that when I originally looked at this proposal, I had some concerns about the width of the lots, but we've had a lot of comments from the residents up around there and they're supportive, so I see no reason at this point to raise any objections.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Seeing none other comments, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 4.4 concerns a community greenhouse gas reduction strategy. It's the City's response to Bill 27. The recommendation is that Council, having given consideration to the requirements of Section 879 and other sections of the Local Government Act, 1, direct staff to seek input from interested parties during the development of their strategy in the following manner: conduct a public open house and use the City's webpage to inform and update the public. 2, direct staff to advise and seek feedback on any resulting amendments to the OCP from the parties listed here. And 3, not require consultation with the board or any other regional district or any other school districts except as noted within the report, as they are not considered affected by the subject policy review.
Second. I see no comments. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Next item, item 4.5, concerns zoning bylaw amendment application to permit a crematorium in the M1 General Industrial Zone. The recommendation is that Council direct staff to implement option 3 to amend the M1 General Industrial Zone to permit a crematorium limited to a specific site.
I'll move it. Second.
Okay. Councillor McDonnell.
Yeah, thank you. I have no problem with this. One of the issues with the options here, option 3 directs us to give okay to specific sites. I think that that's going a little overboard, micromanaging on our part. I think that if we're directed to have this in an industrial zone, that's good enough. I don't think we need to get on to any more specific sites than just directing it into the general area of the industrial zone. So I would support option 2 rather than how I feel we're micromanaging with option 3.
Are you moving option 2, Mr. Councillor?
Well, option 3 has already been moved, but I would
move an amendment?
I would move an amendment to option 2.
Do we have a seconder to that? Sorry, no seconder?
Apparently not.
Okay. Are you finished, Councillor McDonnell?
Yep.
Okay. Councillor Lynch, please.
I was just curious, I didn't see it within here, and what if staff knows how many employees crematorium might employ?
Your Worship, have that figure at hand. I note that the proponent is here tonight and that he may want to speak if there's a question from council. Otherwise, we can follow up with them and get back to you with that information. It's not a large operation, is my understanding, though.
Yeah, I would be curious because whenever we're considering new businesses, that's something that's always of interest to me. So if the proponent wishes to, or they come...
Well, we'd have to have a vote of council. Would council want to entertain to have the proponent come and speak before council? Is that... No? No. No option for that?
Well, perhaps I can have that information conveyed to me privately then at some point, because I'd like to know.
Is that it, Councillor Lynn?
Thank you.
Councillor Reid? Okay. Seeing no other questions, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Reid, Councillor McDonnell, Councillor Secor, and myself are opposed. Failed.
I would move option 2. Again, if I could.
No, it's been moved and seconded. We have a motion on the floor. Councillor Reid?
Okay, well, I'll speak to this one. I'm opposed to this in general, so we'll get that right out on the table first. But to have it allowed in any general industrial zone, I think is a huge mistake. I think it needs to be site-specific. There are some of our industrial M1 zones that back up to other businesses that aren't in industrial categories. And I think this is a sensitive issue, and I think it should be site-specific somewhere. I mean, you can leave it in M1 industrial, but it should be able to come to staff and to council to make sure that we're in the appropriate M1 zone. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sikora?
Thank you very much. This came before us, and as a land use chairman, I did vote for it to go onward to the council members, but I was never in favor of it. I'll tell you what's happening. The fact is that, this is site-specific. The fact is that, these people be chasing around industrial land, trying to find a piece of land, and the committee can turn it down, or this council can turn it down. So it's really no really good answers. The fact is that this thing came forward to us, I think back in the 70s when I was a council member then. And certainly, they want to put it on North Road next to the funeral parlor that's there now, which is totally not an appropriate place. Most of the crematoriums are in cemeteries. Ours is way too small for a crematorium, and too many residents in the area. You notice the one in Vancouver and Burnaby is in the middle of about 200 acres of land. So it's appropriate. I don't know where they're going to find a piece of land that I think this council, any other council of Coquitlam would ever approve it. So I'm totally opposed to any crematoriums in Coquitlam this particular time. We're not short of crematoriums. There's about 8 or so that are licensed crematoriums. If we were short, then I could see myself having to scramble and do something, but there isn't. So I can't see myself to have somebody go on a wild goose chase trying to look for a piece of property that may never work out. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Reamer?
Thank you. Well, the fact of life, death is a big business. And there's about 6 other crematoriums operating in the Lower Mainland, and I quite suspect we'll probably see even more in the future. I was quite willing to support option number 3 for the text bylaw amendment so that we could get this gentleman's application up and going. I note he sent his original letter in August, and we're now at November. So I was quite willing to support it for the purposes of moving things along for the proponent. But perhaps I would also like to see, because of some of this controversy around the table here, I would like to see that the industrial review that we're currently pursuing and should be finished in the spring of 2010, I'd like to see us include broader policy and regulatory information and to set out some sort of process for accommodating this type of land use. So being that number 3 failed, I'm wondering if I can make an amendment to do option number 3 at this time, but subject...
We have a motion on the floor of option 2 at this present time.
Option 2, okay.
It's been moved and seconded.
Okay.
So we're dealing with that motion on the floor right now.
Thank you.
So you finished?
That's all. Yeah, I'm finished.
Councillor McDonnell.
Yeah, I understand that some councillors have a problem or an issue with crematoriums in the city. I don't. I don't think that in the industrial zone that they're an intrusive business. Any of the loading, offloading, any of the business that they have to do will all be done inside, behind closed doors. I really don't even think that the community will be aware of it unless they need the services. So I just don't see the problem in there, and that's I'm supporting option 2.
Councillor Lynch.
Well, it's unfortunate that option 3 didn't pass because I was in favor of that, but I won't be able to support option 2. We do have a family-owned funeral home, and when they need to have somebody cremated, they need to send that person all the way out to Maple Ridge and back. And so I think there is a requirement for this service and for the residents of Coquitlam or people around here. And I would like to have supported it, and I would have had we been able to proceed with option 3. But I think we do need to be site-specific. I think the council does need to retain that discretion on where we want this type of business.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. I have no problem with the crematorium being within our city. The area is 2,500 square feet. It's going to be a very small building impact within an industrial. Any zone is going to be. It's not going to be a major impact. So I mean, it's up to them if they want to build it, operate it, and run it. So I have no problem with that. I'd be willing to support option 2, but I don't see any other speakers, so I'll call for a vote and we'll see where we get. So, all those in favor of option 2? Those opposed? Councillor Sikora, Councillor Donnelly, Councillor Reid, Councillor Lynch, Councillor Reamer. It is defeated. We are at, okay. Councillor Reamer.
Can I make my
yes,
amendment
you
now?
May.
Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to move option number 3 with an amendment that the current industrial zone review that we're undertaking include broader policy and regulatory information and set out a recommended approach for accommodating this proposed land use.
Okay. Any comments on the amendment of option 3? Seeing none, I'll call. Oh, no seconder. Sorry, there is no seconder. I'm sorry, Councillor Reamer. There's no. Are you seconded, Councillor? No. Oh. Okay. Barry seconded it. We have the motion is on the floor. Councillor Lynch, are we ready to vote on this issue? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. So I have some questions of clarification about, I'm not quite sure I understand what the motion is, particularly the second part.
Okay.
I understand we're doing an industrial review, so I'm just looking for clarification about how is it different from...
Option 1?
Yeah. Like it's just need, if you can repeat it one more time.
Okay, the whole idea is that we go ahead with number 3 for this particular instance, and that we include this issue of where to locate crematoriums within the industrial land review. Basically what I did in making my motion was I took the last sentence of option number 1, which Mr. McIntyre had written up.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Councillor McDonnell.
I don't really agree with the amendment, but I'm going to support it anyways because I don't want to be in the way of putting a kibosh on a new business in Coquitlam. So I'll reluctantly go along with this.
Okay. Seeing no other speakers, call for the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora, Councillor Reid are opposed. It passes. Next item, please.
Next item, item 4.6, concerns interim development application process for small-scale innovative housing choices in southwest Coquitlam. The recommendation is that Council adopt this process for accommodating small-scale innovative housing choices in southwest Coquitlam in advance of completing new and updating existing neighborhood plans.
Second.
Second. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I note that this recommendation does not incorporate the direction or part of the recommendation that we had made that staff give it a cursory look, run it by council before you get into any deep and involved negotiation.
That direction was indeed received by staff and has been recorded in the minutes of the Land Use Committee, and I understand that the staff in Planning Development are implementing a process to accommodate that request.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 5 concerns the minutes of the Engineering, Utilities and Environment Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 9th. Recommendations to receive those minutes.
Second.
They've been moved and seconded. Any errors or omissions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
The item of business arising out of that committee's meeting concerns advancing the Coast Meridian Widening project. The recommendation is that, in conjunction with the upcoming budget decisions associated with the 2010 financial plan, Council approve the use of long-term borrowing from the MFA, the Municipal Finance Authority, to support advancing the widening and improvements to Coast Meridian Road in the 2010 5-year financial plan.
Do we have a seconder? Okay, moved and seconded. Were you going to be speaking, Council? Okay, Councillor Secor ahead his mic. Just 1 second.
I always felt that, I believe that the motion is still on in these council from a few years ago, where you could not borrow money to service land in northeast Coquitlam for housing or any other property. You could not borrow money.
We removed that?
Has that been removed?
It's been removed.
Okay, it's been removed. So I'm fully supportive of the fact is that, you have to borrow money. It's a self-liquidation kind of fund, to where if you borrow money for sewer and water, it's self-liquidation, pays for itself. It's certainly not something that's a burden on our taxpayers or anybody else. So I support this. I think it's a great way of going. We used to go this way for years and years and years until about 4, 5, 6 years ago. I guess it was Councillor Maxine Wilson then made a motion that there never be any money borrowed for any servicing in Coquitlam, which I think is wrong. How much money has the city spent? About $45 million since that bylaw came into effect, that we could have borrowed on the self-liquidation, had $45 million we could have done other things with. Am I correct? Am I wrong, Mr. Sevlin?
I don't have the exact figures, but that seems reasonable.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch. Oh, sorry, Councillor Reid. I'm sorry.
It's $5.5 million, and I'm reading the recommendation very carefully. It says, in conjunction with the upcoming budget decisions. So I'm assuming that this is going to go to budget. Is that correct?
That is correct. This will be one of the items, but because it's slightly different than some of the other decisions, we thought we would flesh out the policy decision in this fashion before. So this could be interpreted that it's subject to the decisions to be made through the budget process.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Well, in general, it's not my preference to be borrowing money to do these types of works, but it seems like this has almost been the perfect storm here. We got Port Coquitlam doing some work that we can take advantage of their work going in there. We've got interest rates and construction costs at a historic low. And so sometimes there's the opportunities that provide themselves, and in different circumstances, we may have decided this wasn't something we should go ahead with. But under these circumstances and this time, where we can actually get a better value for our dollar, it makes more sense to go ahead with it now. We're still going to be paying for it the same way, it's just we will be doing it sooner, and that's why we advance it by borrowing the cost now. So in general, I don't like to be borrowing for these type of things, but I think this is one of the opportunities that is the right thing to do at the right time.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. I support this. I think this is greatly needed. The road from the new bridge, David Avenue Bridge, going down Coast Meridian is very busy, and it's dangerous, and it needs to be done. The issue also is that a lot of this money is going to be paid back out of DCC funding for this. So it is not a drain on any of our resources within the city. So I hopefully that this will pass. I support this. Do we have a motion? Councillor Secor would like to speak again.
I just wanted to mention one thing. I was wrong on 45 million. It's 48 million, to be exact. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next item, please.
Item 6 concerns the minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 9th. The recommendation is to receive those minutes.
Okay, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 6.3 relates to the 2010 Leisure and Parks fees and charges. The recommendation from the Standing Committee is that the fees and charges for leisure and park services, which are set based on the average calculations and which are currently below that average, be increased to the average. 2, that private and commercial rates for meeting room rentals be increased by 10%. And finally, that based upon the above recommendations, Council approve the 2010 Leisure and Parks Services fees and charges, noting that in the future years they be referred to budget and that they be included as a schedule of fees to the City of Coquitlam Fees and Charges Bylaw.
So moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. I was not at the Parks Recreation Committee, don't belong to it, but anyways, in any case, what was the discussion that this magic figure came about of 10% increase? What was the magic figure of 10%? Where'd that come out of? And why the 10%? Why not 6 or 10 or 12 or rather 12 or whatever it is?
I think the next speaker can probably explain that, the chair of the committee. So is that your only question?
Sure.
Okay. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy with this recommendation that's coming forward. We're keeping our fees low and competitive with the other cities. We're not behind the others. We're not ahead of them. But if you go through the fees and charges, youth fees are as low as possible to encourage participation. I think that Coquitlam has been a leader in our area, in the Tri-City area, with youth fees. I note that since Coquitlam moved to lower youth fees, registrations and fees to as low as possible a couple of years ago, that the majority of cities that surround us have followed suit. So we can feel good about that part. As for the 10%, we have to be mindful that while we may not be charging for some youth fees and keeping youth fees low, the economic reality is that these facilities all cost money. And if we, by lowering rates for our youth, we can look to be average or be competitive with our neighboring cities for fees that are for private or commercial use, then I'm in full agreement with it.
Thank you. That answers it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor McDonnell. Councillor Lynch.
Well, I just want to add my comments to that. When we had this meeting and the chair brought forward the private and commercial rates, we talked about what the tolerance level was and what our current meeting room rental rates were, and it was felt that this wouldn't adversely affect anybody, but was bringing some more revenue. Something along the lines that we also looked at the average rates of what we're charging, and though we didn't want to raise any, there was some that were lower than average, and we felt that, again, the tolerance of that coming up to the average was reasonable considering what services we were providing for the neighboring cities. So I think in a balance, this is we're looking for some revenues that would not negatively impact our attendance rates from youth and even adults in some of our services. So I think on a balance, this is a recommendation that I'll support.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Seeing no other comments, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 7 is a bylaw for fourth and final reading. Its subject is the Joint Administration of Bylaw Notice Dispute Adjudication Processes Bylaw, 4039. The recommendation is that Council give consideration to fourth and final reading of Bylaw 4039.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Item 8, also a bylaw for fourth and final reading, concerns Parkland Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw 4070 for future parks in Northeast Coquitlam. The recommendation is that Council give consideration to fourth and final reading of Bylaw 4070.
Recommendation. Second. Moved and seconded. I see no comments. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next item, please.
Item 9 is a Boulevard Maintenance Amending Bylaw 4080. The recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to this bylaw.
Do we have a mover? Seconder? Councillor Sikora?
Thank you very much. This bylaw looks good on paper, but in reality, it's a problem. The problem is this, very, very simple. The people clear their snow off their sidewalks, comes a snowplow up, a few minutes later and digs their sidewalk right in. And then, you know, they have to go and clean it out again. That's a problem. And the last snowfall, one handicapped person that literally cannot get out of their house. They walked with 2 canes, and the only way they could get out of their alley, and to get their alley cleared, it took 4 days. And the gentleman was phoning me, he was literally crying on the phone. They had no groceries in his house and a few other things. Those are things that really happen. On paper, this looks very, very, very good. And I know one gentleman that's even sitting here in the council chambers that lives in Westwood Plateau. He dug out his driveway and everything else, or paid somebody to do his driveway. The snow came along, a snowplow came along and pushed everything right into his yard. And then he phoned about maybe 6 or 8 times to try and get somebody to go up there to clean it out. No, there was no such thing. I phoned about 5 or 6 times, no such thing, including him calling that he couldn't even get an answer back or a phone call back. So, you know, all this sounds good, looks good, but I can tell you, how are we gonna know that the person lives on a street that's a handicapped person or an elderly person cannot clean their sidewalk? We will not know. So we'll be issuing tickets and a whole lot of things. And I think that the city's got to come clean first before they start doing some of the things that they want to do. It sounds good, looks good, and everything else, but in reality, I don't think it's going to work.
Thank you, Councillor Sikora. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. It's too bad that Mayor Stewart's not here, because we could have a great discussion about the carrot versus the stick conversation yet again, because this is clearly a stick. And I would love it if we could have a carrot sort of model for encouraging people to clear their sidewalks. I have similar concerns that Councillor Sikora just mentioned, because I have been one of those people who's cleared sidewalks only to have the plows dump the snow right back onto the sidewalk. So I met with our staff and asked some questions about why aren't we putting snow just on the sides of the roads so that, you know, it stays on the roads. Well, the response to that is, then where will people park? And people don't want or cannot always park on their property. So our choice, because the truth is we cannot keep the snow from falling, and we'll see more and more of it. So, and it will fall on our sidewalks, it will fall on our roads. So we have a choice. We can either have snow on the sides of the roads and no one will be able to park, and people will be miserable about that, or we can encourage our citizens using as many carrots as possible to be good citizens and to participate in snow angel projects, to take their responsibility as citizens seriously and get out there, shovel often, so the snow's not too heavy if you wait for it to stop. We can educate our citizens so that they are fully prepared. We usually have a couple days notice that a snow event is likely to occur. So stock up on diapers and your medication and all that kind of stuff, because you may not be able to get out of your house and around very easily. Because I think that's just the reality, and we need to be prepared for that. So, given that we are not designed as a snow city, because snow cities apparently design their streets differently than we have designed our streets, we are on very steep terrain. We need to participate in this, I think. We all do. We need to pay attention to our neighbors who may not be able to shovel their sidewalks and help them out, or who may be stranded. And I did see a few flakes on Saturday morning, so it's coming. So with that, I support this, but I really would prefer to have more carrots than sticks on this one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lynch.
Well, I support this bylaw, but I do have a bit of a problem when we're talking about that the sidewalk must be kept clear regardless of how it was deposited by a snowplow or not. and I think we've all had the experience where we've gone out, come home, and even our driveway's been plowed in something. And one of the questions that was raised with me was that, okay, how is it that other municipalities, neighboring municipalities, can make a commitment that if it has been, their sidewalks have been blocked by the snowplow or their roadway, that the other municipalities are making a commitment that they will take care of their citizens and residents by responding with a city vehicle to clear that off. And to me, that makes a lot of sense that we should have some responsibility as a city, that if someone has already cleared the sidewalk and that we then block it, then we should have some responsibility to clear it. And so the question I guess I have through you, Mr. Chair, to the staff is, how is it that other municipalities, neighboring municipalities, can make that commitment to the residents, and yet we as the largest city in the Tri-Cities do not?
Mr. Suzak, please, could you respond?
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Chair. The approach that Coquitlam staff are taking is that to enshrine a requirement in a policy statement that sidewalks will be cleared within a certain time frame, and to make that commitment binds the city to that policy. And if that cannot take place, our view is that liability is opened up to the city, specifically on trip and fall issues, and that could be a consequence. I really can't comment on other jurisdictions taking different approaches, but that's our advice. I think that we absolutely recognize the issues of the vulnerable populations. And that's why we have committed on an operational basis to devote resources for sidewalk clearing when we've got those resources available. That's simply never been a commitment in the past, but we prefer not to enshrine that in some kind of a council policy statement, because we feel that there are some downsides to that. In addition, we have suggested that the community needs more capacity. That's why we're suggesting programs like the Snow Angels, hopefully better communication for our residents to help coach them, to help each other. The view we take is that snow removal is definitely a partnership between the city and its residents. We feel that we need some regulatory help, if you will, to make sure that it's clear that the city's policy is that residents are responsible for frontage sidewalks. However, on an operational basis, on a community building basis, we will do what we can.
Thank you, Mr. Suzak.
Okay, well, I guess I have a bit of a philosophical difference on this. I think that we as a city, as a regulatory body, do have the responsibility to say to the residents, you must clear your sidewalk. However, then after they've cleared the sidewalk, then we as a city, and we're a service provider, come along and bury it, then we say, now it's your responsibility to clear it again. And if I think in circumstances where it is able to be proven or at least in some way surmised that it was an action of the city that is causing the sidewalk not to be cleared, then I think we have some responsibility. I think that's our level of service, and I have a real problem telling residents that we're going to plow you in or block your sidewalks, and it's your responsibility, because we are here as an elected body to provide services, and I think that it's our responsibility. Once they, as a citizen, has done what we've asked of them, if we come along and change that, that's not their fault. I think we, as a council, need to look at this again, because I don't think we're providing the level of service that our citizens require.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. I guess my comment, I think I relate back to Councillor Robinson. The snow has to go somewhere. We either have to pile it on the street or we move it over and it goes on the sidewalks. The cost also, then, I would think for your suggestion should be looked at, but we should also know what that cost is. Right now, we maintain the arterial roads, collector roads, as our number one, number two priorities, and we will try to get to local roads when we have the resources available. And I don't think we've ever plowed all our local roads. In the report we just did, we depend on the level of grade. And from what I know around the region is most cities do not plow their roads. We went $900,000 over budget last year plowing the main arterial and local roads and some of the more higher local roads. And so the cost, I do believe, is enormous. We have to continue to look at better ways of doing our job, better ways of trying to avoid this. There is no magic. I think that's a problem, but the other problem is for engineering to figure out where does that snow, where are you going to put that snow? You're plowing a roadway, the snow has to go somewhere. And I would say that we could ask staff after this to come back with a cost of sidewalk clearing or clearing of areas where we plowed and give us those numbers to council. But it's costly, I would say, for the city. We can look into it. We can have the budget numbers for council's consideration, and I think that would give council a better understanding of the overall cost. Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was wondering if we could get clarification from staff on where the snow is going to end up, because I've heard two councillors ask a question that I'm not sure has been, at least in my mind, answered. And that is it going to end up after we plow it on the side of the street, or will it, in fact, end up on could it end up on a sidewalk?
Sure, Mr. Chair. Yes, it could end up on a sidewalk. We are dealing with a city which is not unlike other jurisdictions in the Lower Mainland, where sidewalks are quite close to curb lines, which is very different way of providing sidewalk services from other communities that have snow 6 months of the year. Typically, in many other communities across the country, sidewalks are offset from a curb line by a reasonably wide boulevard, and that's where the snow tends to get piled up. But the way we've chosen to design and build our communities on the Lower Mainland, which may well have something to do with the value of property and the value of land and how things are developed here, we don't have that luxury of that room, and that's an issue, and it does wind up on sidewalks. Just another comment on relative volume. The city has about 1,100 centerline kilometers of roadways, and that's comprised of the big roads and local roads. Within that inventory, the city has about 500 kilometers of sidewalk just on the arterial and collector network, not dealing with the local roads at all. So I'm certainly happy to go back, get some further information, but that's the scale of potential expense that you could think about.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly, is that it?
Well, thank you. I think given that, I can't support this, given that there could be quite a pile of snow that depends how many times it snows. You could end up piling up quite a large amount on the sidewalk, and I don't see how we can expect the property owners, Councillor Lynch has pointed out, to unbury that sidewalk after they've cleared it. I could see clearing a light or even the first snow layer, but if a snowplow comes along, I've seen, especially in the upper heights areas, that accumulates and amounts to quite a bit. So in its current form, as it states here, I don't support this. I think we need to look at this further, and it's obviously going to be something that needs to be worked out. There's been emails that's been going back and forth by at least one person up on Westwood Plateau concerned about the parking restrictions that will be set, and so that's another issue, that where the snow goes, how people get out of their driveways and how they clear their sidewalks it will be an ongoing issue. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
Well, this is quite the dilemma. I know when you go into Vancouver and North Van, where I used to live, the boulevards, they have wide boulevards, so the snow can go up there, and it's a simple matter of clearing the sidewalks. But in our city, that doesn't happen. And on some of the roads that we have, the grades, I mean, mine is about 13%, I guess it's like this. It's really hard, and if you leave it on the road, it wouldn't be passable because you go down like this in the very beginning. But what I was going to ask, and then I answered it all by myself, is going into the amendment of, because we already have a snow and ice bylaw, correct, Mr. Susak?
Yes, Your Worship,
Yeah,
that's
so
correct.
what you're trying to do is strengthening it by putting within 10 hours and regardless of where in the heck it came from, correct?
Yes, in summary, last year, the bylaw adjudicator of the city dismissed all complaints, if you wish, on the basis that the bylaw did not specifically state that it is a homeowner's responsibility to clear snow subsequent to the first snowfall. And so we're simply clarifying the bylaw so that it has force and effect throughout a snow and ice event. Mr. Wingrove may have a better interpretation of that.
Mr. Wingrove.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of the bylaw amendment is, in fact, to begin the operating of the snow and ice plan that has been approved by Council. And there's been an analogy made earlier to this notion of a carrot and a stick, and there's no doubt that a boulevard maintenance or a boulevard maintenance bylaw amendment of this nature appears to be a bit of an enforcement tool. I guess if this helps council members, certainly the intent from a bylaw enforcement perspective is to deal with this through a compliance perspective and assist property owners in understanding what their obligations are to keep sidewalks clear and to help neighbors, help each other to keep sidewalks clear. The reasons for sidewalk clearing aren't because of the Boulevard Maintenance Amending bylaw, but because a very common question that we get during a snowstorm is how am I supposed to get to the bus stop, or how are my children supposed to get to school? And those are compelling reasons why people need to keep their sidewalks clear. And the intention here is not to have tickets that will pass muster with the adjudicator, but rather to have a tool that's available to staff and work on this from an education perspective first and foremost. So really we're just trying to operationalize the snow and ice plan that's been approved by council, and gaining compliance is certainly a priority as opposed to writing tickets under the amended bylaw.
Well, I could probably pass this if you took out was deposited by the snowplow, because I'll tell you that would certainly tick me right off if I just shoveled it. And I think if we get rid of that, I just don't think that the snowplow should be able to come along after I've worked for 2 hours to remove it. If there's another snowfall, I understand it, but not the snowplow, sorry.
Are you making an amendment?
Yes.
Yeah. And seconded? Anybody speaking to the amendment? Councillor McDonnell, to the amendment, please.
Yeah, this is a difficult decision to make because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. We could certainly provide that service for Coquitlam, but I don't think the residents would be prepared to spend the amount of money to hire the people that would come in and do that. It's just not reasonable to expect that to happen. And certainly we all received our fair share of emails over the last winter over that snow event, people happy and unhappy with the service. It's unfortunate that our snowplows deposit the snow over on the sidewalks, but there's really no other place to put it. And so when it goes on the sidewalks, then the reality is that it has to be cleared. So yes, the city can clear it, but we'd have to hire way too many people to do that, and it's not feasible. And I certainly heard from enough people during that snow event that were very unhappy with not being able to walk down the sidewalks or be able to pass down the sidewalks, that we need some sort of enforcement tool like this on the books. It may not be the most ideal situation or the ideal solution, but certainly it's the only one that seems to make any sense. So I'm open to any other suggestions, but until I hear any other suggestions, I think that we have to go this way.
Okay. Mr. Wingrove.
Through the Chair, just to build on the statement that Mr. Susak made earlier, having a bylaw of this nature does not mean that the city will not go out and provide some support for sidewalks under certain circumstances. I think the purpose of a bylaw of this nature is to ensure that we are not required to do it as a matter of policy under all circumstances, because there are circumstances under which it wouldn't be possible to do that. But depending on the conditions and availability of resources and so forth, those types of opportunities may still exist. They just wouldn't exist as a default position and as a matter of policy by the City of Coquitlam.
Thank you, Mr. Wingrove. Councillor McAnally, you finished? Okay. Councillor Lynch.
Well, I was going to qualify what the amendment was. Councillor Reid was talking about snowplows, and in the bylaw it talks about mechanical or other means, which I assume was going to be brought out. But I think that, as I've said before, there's other municipalities that are making that commitment to the residents, and also I haven't heard what it would take. We don't have a policy, and we're not going to set a policy in order to assist our residents, but I haven't heard exactly under what conditions would we respond to a resident. And because I've seen it where the snowplows come along, it's on the sidewalk, people come out, they just shovel it back on the road, because where else are they going to put it? So the snowplow comes along, shovels it back onto the sidewalk. I think my concern has to be with the fact that we're going to be taking enforcement action against people who have already complied with the original intent. The original intent was to keep the sidewalk clear. If they have done what they were supposed to do to keep the sidewalk clear, I don't want there to be enforcement taken against them when we as a city come back and redeposit the snow where they just cleared it from. That's the commitment I need in order to support this bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Sikora.
The problem that I have is, I know what the problem that the city has, and the snowplow people have to take the snow off the road and put it over the sidewalk. But the fact is, what I'm really concerned about is the bylaw itself. The bylaw enforcement people will go out and issue tickets, and maybe needed to issue a ticket, maybe not. Who makes that decision? It's up to them to make that decision. And that's where I have a great problem, because people will get their sidewalks plowed over, and probably the amount that they got it off the sidewalk, they'll get 10 times the amount on their sidewalk. And I got great problems with that. And how much time would the bylaw officer give them to be able to clear that sidewalk? Probably say, if it's not done in 4 hours or 6 hours or whatever, whether they're home or not, there's a ticket. I got great problems with that. I think this bylaw needs a lot of refining, so I cannot support it.
Thank you, Councillor Sikora. Councillor Robinson, to the amendment?
Yes, to the amendment. I'm curious, we have a road priority, if I recall. Could you just remind me of what the road clearing priorities are?
Sure. Your Worship, the priorities are arterials and public transit routes. The lower priorities are local roads. However, within local roads, we have reprioritized for elementary school routes. So we will be getting there sooner in those subzones. So essentially, it's arterials, collectors, local roads.
In that order, okay. So, and if we didn't do local roads, Councillor McDonnell was looking for some sort of other option. If we didn't clear local roads, and people who have sidewalks on local roads wouldn't ever have to worry about the plow dumping snow back on their sidewalks, if we didn't do local roads.
If I can be excused an editorial, that practice would actually be consistent with the vast majority of municipalities in the Lower Mainland. Coquitlam is almost alone in actually having local roads written into a service level within a formal snow and ice response plan.
So in some ways, because we take it the extra level and do local roads, it almost creates a whole new problem for us around this sidewalk issue. I'm just trying to understand how come we can't be the only ones dealing with this problem, but we might really be the only ones dealing with this problem.
There may only be one other municipality. I would have to have staff research this, but we are one of the very, very few that actually formally acknowledge local roads as a priority and actually get in there and do them on a regular basis.
So if we didn't do local roads and we just cleared collectors and did collectors and arterials, we might have resources to do the sidewalks on collectors and arterials, and this would be maybe a non-issue.
I would not disagree with that.
So part of the issue is that we make the commitment to local roads, and as a result then and I agree with Councillor Lynch completely, this bind in terms of, you know, what's fair and just, but it also may not be that practical in terms of making the sidewalks and walking routes accessible. Hence our conflict.
My personal view is that it would be very, very difficult for the city to undertake clearance of sidewalks on local roads. We are, however, committed to do what we can on an operational basis on the higher priorities. For example, sidewalks that are on bus routes, sidewalks along arterials. These are the sidewalks that tend to generate a lot of pedestrian traffic demand. And so hence that's likely where we're going to be devoting our spare resources for clearing sidewalks when we can do so.
Thank you.
Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I'm really torn about this. I agree with everybody around the table on both sides of this issue. I'm just curious to know, and perhaps you already said, and perhaps I didn't hear it, how many bylaw tickets were at issue here with regards to the snow plows depositing the snow?
Who's going to, Mr. Winbrook?
Through the chair, I don't have the information with me tonight, but I could certainly determine that and circulate that to council members.
Right, and do we have any idea how many complaints we received with respect to snow plows depositing on people's sidewalks?
Your Worship, we would have taken complaints, regarding that. However, we would have taken also as many, if not more, complaints about lack of pedestrian access, lack of shoveling sidewalks.
Okay.
I mean, from our perspective, keeping a sidewalk clear is not a punitive thing. It's just simply practical. It's something that we need to do.
Thank you.
Okay. We have an amendment on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. I see no... Can I hear that again? Mr. Gilbert, please.
The amendment, which would be required to be an amendment to the bylaw text itself, is that within the clause identified here that a statement be added that with the exception of snow deposited by a city plow. Is that? By snow plow.
Well, just for a little clarification on that, so if an unfortunate homeowner gets a snow plow coming down the road and gets some snow deposited on their sidewalk from the snow plow, and then it snows again, do you think that they should just clear off the snow that's just snowed and then leave the rest of the snow there? Okay.
Well, that it count questions? So
yeah, I think it's kind of silly, but sure.
Yeah. Seeing no other speakers, we have to have a vote for second rounds of speaking. If there's
never mind then.
Okay. All those in favor of the amendment?
Personal views, if you can just keep up.
Opposed? It's a tie. It's defeated. Is Councillor McDonnell, Councillor Robbins, Councillor myself, and Councillor Reamer opposed? Back to the main motion. Seeing no other speakers, all those in favor on the main motion? Those opposed? Is defeated. So my recommendation was for staff would come back with more information to staff to council at a later date to help them make this decision.
It's not going to snow till you do.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Next item, please.
Next item, item 10, concerns the Metro Vancouver Board and Brief, for which our board representative is available to respond to questions. The recommendation is that council receive this brief for information.
Second. Seeing no. Councillor Robinson.
I have a question for Councillor Reid. Colony Farm. I see that it has been approved, their draft plan, and I'm wanting to know if there was any more discussion around the table around inviting cities to get more information as part of the consultation process.
Oh, I'm on. When it first came to the board a couple of months ago, it was a draft plan, and I questioned it with two members, the chair and another member of the committee, and both of them said, oh, your staff is quite involved, and I'm okay, that's fine. And it was a draft, it has to come back to the board. Upon further observation, Mr. Steblin, our city manager, found out that it indeed hadn't had the scrutiny that Metro initiatives usually get from this staff, and nor has it ever come to our council. So when it came back last week, it was deferred without any discussion whatsoever until Port Coquitlam and Coquitlam could be fully involved and get information flowing back and forth.
And I suspect that these minutes are inaccurate. I suspect that they did them as a shell before it went to the board, and the staff, I do know they pulled it off and the board did not even discuss it. So I think these are simply inaccurate.
Okay. Now, excuse me, these are old minutes from October 30th.
Okay.
So they probably were the first ones, Mr. Steblin, in the month of October.
It says approved.
I would suggest that we clarify that with the board and send a bit of a note, if I could ask the clerk to do that, just to clarify what exactly happened. I know it got reported in the papers as it got deferred, and that was this meeting that they refer to in this.
Oh, okay. I didn't know where she was reading from.
She's reading it from the board and brief. It says October 30th, and I suspect that these are simply inaccurate. We will confirm that if I could get the clerk to do that.
Well, there was no discussion then. If that was the last meeting, it was deferred.
Thanks. As approved, so thank you.
Okay. Councillor Sikora, to the minutes.
Thank you very much. Yeah, on the Colony Farms Regional Park, you know, that thing come up like overnight, like a big secret. Nobody knew anything about it. And I think the one thing that I would say from me, that I would not support any kind of commercial farming on Colony Farms. If it was going to be a farming to where every resident in this city could get a piece of land to plant their own vegetables and look after it, like we have a portion of it there in Colony Farms now. I could support that, but to have one farmer go in there and start up farming, put a commercial site on there and a commercial selling of vegetables. We have a farmer's market right by the Dogwood Pavilion every Sunday basis. I could maybe support that, but sure.
Yes. We're just doing the minutes. We're not doing any of the items from the minutes. This is just
so I realize that, but the fact is it will be coming back. There was never a motion to either kill this or bring it forward again. So it's going to come forward again. And I just wanted to let my feelings known on what I think that we, as far as Colony Farms is concerned, because unless we have somebody from our municipality that's going to sit on that Parks Recreation Committee at the GVD, this thing can come up anytime.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Sikora. Seeing no others, all those in favor of the minutes? Opposed? Carried. Mr. Gilbert, before the next item, I thought there was going to be a correction sheet provided on this item. There is some additional information that we could add verbally.
just introduce the item, and then I'll speak to that. Item 11 is an upgrade of bus service. This motion was put forward at the previous council meeting and is on the floor, is being moved and seconded as a result. The slight correction that Mr. Chair, that you've referred to, is that in the attached memo, where it says South Surrey and White Rock, it also should include Steveston and Tsawwassen as being other sources for that service.
South Delta.
South Delta, yes.
Thank you. Okay, it's on the floor. It's been moved and seconded. Councillor Reid.
Is it going to cost us extra for the cushy buses and the soft seats?
No. Thank you. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. We have two other items, Mr. Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We have two onward transmittal items. These are the copies of the reports in blue, which are found at the back of the room. The first one, new item 12, concerns the Environmental Services Cyclical Review. The recommendation is that Council receive this report for information.
Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. This one here is of course, environmental services, and nobody can argue with that, except that we're going to start a department within the city, and I know that first year there's $75,000 saving in the budget, but this is not the case that ever lives in this city. The fact is, we start a department, and a few years later it goes from 3 to 20 to 30 employees, and it keeps growing, and to me, I'd rather much see an environmental committee picked of the residents in this community as information to our planning engineering department, rather than hiring another manager, creating the manager's job of, and it's budget time. And as long as you have $75,000 saving, the council members feel that it's a very, very good thing. We should do it. But we don't look at the years to come, what happens in this city. Nothing stays the same. The same amount of people do not stay the same. It keeps growing. And then it splinters off to some more managers, and some more, and some more. And pretty soon we have an army. And, I can mention departments that have grown over the past few years by many people for really no reason at all as far as I'm concerned. And so I cannot support this. I think it should be referred back to budget, and we should be looking at the future years, and also be looking at probably a committee rather than inside environmental committee.
Thank you, Councillor Sikora. Seeing no others, all those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Sikora is opposed. It carries. Next item, please.
Next item, item 13, concerns appointments to the Maillardville Commercial and Cultural Revitalization Task Force and also the Multiculturalism Advisory Committee. There are two recommendations. The first is that Council appoint a representative from the Coquitlam Heritage Society to the Maillardville Commercial and Cultural Revitalization Task Force, and two, that Mr. George Roman be appointed to the Multiculturalism Advisory Committee.
Second. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Any around the table items for people? Councillor Donnelly.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just like to give notice that on November 26th I will be resigning from Council after 7 years on Council. As many folks may know, on November 9th I was elected Member of Parliament for New Westminster, Coquitlam and Port Moody. And this will be my final council meeting. So I thought I would take the opportunity to say a number of things, just very briefly. I've had quite an experience on council. I've learned a lot. I have, I think, worked hard to represent the issues that I believe and the concerns that I believe have come from the people of Coquitlam. And I've wrestled with those ideas and brought those forward, and we've had, I think, good discussion at council and deliberated over setting policy and direction for running the city of Coquitlam. And It's been interesting, it's been fun, it's been challenging, it's been everything that local government, I think, should be. And I've certainly enjoyed the questions, the discussions that come from the citizens, people that are really trying to make this city a better place. And I've certainly appreciated that. I've really appreciated the staff that I've gotten to know over the last 7 years in the city. I think the city has an outstanding complement of staff, from the executive to the executive team to individuals that really make this city move. And I'm going to miss that as I move on to establishing a new role in the city, and I hope to simply just change the role and the connection with this council, with the staff, and with the community. So I look forward to serving in a new capacity as a Member of Parliament, and it's certainly been a pleasure over the past 7 years.
Thank you, Councillor Donnelly.
Thank you.
Councillor Secor.
Thank you very much. I would like to wish Councillor Donnelly, our new MP, all the best in Ottawa. Talking from experience, you'll have to find another home in Ottawa. You'll have 2 homes, one here, one in Ottawa, traveling back and forth. It's a long haul. And I'll tell you that the winters in Ottawa are very, very, very cold. And the fact is, when you go to your first question and answer period from 2 to 3, usually every day, you'll want to get on a plane and come right back halfway through it, because I can tell you it's a shouting match. But it's a great experience, and let's hope that I know that you can work hard for Coquitlam and bring us some money on many projects. I know you can, because it doesn't matter what party you belong to, the money is there for any party that you may belong to. It's not the party that's elected, that's the government that has all the money to be able to say yes or no. The MPs have a lot of say. The MP endorses it, you'll get the money. The MP doesn't endorse it, you will not get the money. So that's the way it is. And the money's equal for everybody. It's not for just an elected body that is the government in power, okay? So I wish you luck, and those plane flights, all depends on what plane you catch. Coming home Thursday night usually, going back Sunday afternoon. And if you catch the wrong plane, you'll be stopping in Calgary for refueling, because the headwind is so strong, it'll take you 6.5 hours to get to Vancouver, when it normally takes 4.5. But anyways, I don't want to scare you from it. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Councillor Donnelly, I just want to wish you all the best in this next phase in your career. I know you've worked diligently hard as a councillor, and I'm quite sure that you will take that same hard work with you to Ottawa and be committed to making what you believe is the best, just not for Coquitlam, but for all of Canada. So very much good luck, and thank you for your service. Anybody to move adjournment? Second. All those in favor? Okay, we're adjourned. It is now question period. Anybody wishing to come forward at this time? We have 15 minutes in which you can ask questions about what is on the agenda for tonight. It must be an item that was for debate.
I understand the rule.
My
name is Ralph Barney, and my address is 1386 Deer Ridge Lane in Coquitlam, BC. And I give you credit about the dilemma relating to the snow clearing and the snow plowing. And I have to say that, first of all, I have to congratulate staff for doing such a phenomenal job on the roads in Coquitlam, except for my place. Okay. Now, over the course of the last winter, and this is where it comes to the people that are concerned about sideways, I live in a cul-de-sac up on the hill, and I was plowed in, and if you don't realize what happens with snow when it's plowed, it gets about I don't know if it's 100 times heavier or 50 times heavier, but it's a lot more than it was when I cleared my driveways and sidewalks. I was plowed in to the tune of 3.5 to 4 feet of snow in my driveway. I phoned the city. The city said, it's our responsibility to clear roads. We do not clear driveways. I said, but you've plowed me in. My driveway was absolutely clear. My sidewalks were absolutely clear.
Mr. Benny, do you have a question, please?
The question is, enjoy the dilemma, and I hope you can work it out, but I just thought that I would bring that forth and just give you an example of why.
Thank you very much. Seeing no others,
It has to be an agenda item, does it?
It must be on the agenda. It has to be an agenda item.
Jim Allard, 1930 Burnett. I did hear the alderman speak, and I'd just like to say congratulations, Finn Donnelly. I think it's a blessing for me to see you in Ottawa. and congratulations, but I do say that there are certain things that sometimes we agree on, and I think you did a hell of a job chairing the Coquitlam River Aggregate Task Force, and I just offer my thanks and my good luck to you in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I don't know. I got a deck of cards here to see who should chair that one.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you, everybody. Good night.